So many of us long for the kind of transformative encounter that is described in that poem. It's the sort of transformation that is possible when someone who has hurt us, perhaps with that entirety, like maybe only a mother can, or maybe with ways more particular yet still biting. When a person who has hurt us comes to us with what Olds calls true regret, the regret of the body. The power of this posture makes possible in us a whole new personhood. As she writes, who will I be now? This exchange of remorse and apology shifts everything. It is the opposite of those bad apologies and the opposite of how many of us learn how to apologize. On playgrounds and between siblings, we learn that apology is just a way to avoid punishment, or as some sort of magic wand where it could just make all things better. Sometimes I admit I find myself saying to my kids in service of expediency after they've had some argument or one of them has done some obvious wrong, say you're sorry. And the offender parrots back, sorry. And notice in that no first person pronoun was ever involved. It's not I'm sorry, just sorry. And then we move on. We learned to say sorry in a fast thinking way. We skip over the slow, deliberate consideration, that inventory that might bring us to the honest and authentic regret, which is a prerequisite for real repair. To arrive at this place, it often takes a lot of those prayers of opening our hearts. And it also takes open conversations with those we have hurt to listen for the impact that they experienced. Maybe even more, I think it takes prayers that we will be able to stay put through this process. That is, that our commitment to repair, not just the relationship, but repair something in ourselves, will not waver, regardless of whatever misery arrives when our prayer to know our part is answered. It is all those feelings, those horrible feelings of knowing that you are wrong, except they're a real human consequence. As soon as we have seen what we have done, we want to unsee it. We want to explain and justify and minimize and forget. So we need that steadfast commitment to repair, to help us keep seeing, keep feeling, and keep saying, yes, this was my part. I was wrong. Because only in this acknowledgement and its pain will we find the resolve to never repeat the same action in the future, which is the point. There is no repair while the harm continues. There is no repair without the resolve for the harm to stop, which does not mean a sudden burst of perfection where no harm ever happens again. There are no good people, no bad people. We all cause harm. So another break is a part of the deal in any relationship. But the idea must be that this thing we have done, we are determined to stop doing. We are determined to learn and determined to change ourselves, change our habits, change our understanding. I was speaking a couple weeks ago with Foothills member and restorative justice expert Terry Ashley earlier this month about apologizing and repairing relationships. Terry offered me a 4-part formula that she teaches that is grounded in commitment to change and repair, a 4-part formula for apologizing. So I want to share that with you. It starts with the simple but meaningful phrase, I am sorry that I, and then you just fill in the blank. Now, both parts of this first phrase are really important. Sometimes we can get really stuck in articulating our regret, but never actually apologize. So if you start with, I am sorry that I, then you ensure you don't skip over the apology in your apology. And then I am sorry that I, allows you to say how you have been wrong. That is the harm you've caused, shaped by that prayer to know your part, and then through deep listening to the other. An apology begins with the first person, but it is always focused towards the second. This out loud acknowledgement of the harm you have caused to the person who experienced the harm is critical to repair, as it releases that internal regret into something external and therefore accountable. Okay, so that's just step one. I am sorry that you fill in the blank. Step two, it was wrong or hurtful because, and then you describe the impact. Now, it's possible that you have a sense of the harm, but then through the process of apologizing, you learn more. And then you expand and amend the apology accordingly. It's an iterative process, a dialogue where you share your growing understanding of why it was harmful. In this step, be careful to avoid explanations, or at least keep them to a minimum. Explanations are first person, and apologies are focused on the second. Okay, so again, the first was, I am sorry that I. Second, it was wrong or hurtful because. And then the third step, next time I will. And then you say the change you are determined to make. That is the way that you will commit to refraining from the harm in the future. And also what you're doing to hold yourself accountable. Change is hardly ever about the individual. After all, change happens in context, in relationship, in systems. And so also, what is the systemic way that you are committed to change? So one, I am sorry that I. Two, it was wrong or hurtful because. And three, next time I will. Brings us to four. Finally, you acknowledge, I'd like your forgiveness. And then you ask, what can I do to make things right? And then you listen. It is not always possible to make things back the way they were before the break, to repair in exactly the sense of putting things exactly all in the right pieces. Often the break changes us. But as one Jewish teaching acknowledges, the work of repair has its own intrinsic purposes, regardless of whether or not the repair can ever be accomplished. It is the effort and the resulting change of heart that matters. So that's it. I am sorry that it was wrong or hurtful because. Next time I will. I'd like your forgiveness. What can I do to make things right? I have always imagined in that poem from Sharon Olds that although she describes it, she talks about it as a single encounter. The process that she's describing would have happened over a long period of time, a slow period, where at the end she finds herself at this thing called forgiveness. Forgiveness is complicated, especially for those of us who grew up with a Christian notion of infinite forgiveness. It's a kind of model that makes forgiveness into fast thinking. It is automatic and assumed. But real repair is slow, deliberate, and intentional. The apology opens us up and makes the repair possible, but it isn't in and of itself repair. In our conversation, Terry offered an incredibly freeing invitation, which was, she said, just don't worry about forgiveness. Instead, spend your time focused on the actual work of repair. In her observations, we can get hung up on this idea of forgiveness, which actually asks a lot of work of the one harmed, when really the work needs to fall on the person who was wrong to follow through, to change, and to make amends however possible. There are a million ways to make a bad apology. I mean, if you don't believe me, go to that Sorry Watch site, and or they're also on Twitter. There's so many incredible examples of apologies that are not apologies. You can see how these apologies came from the fast thinking place, the place of defensiveness and self protection, reactivity, and an overwhelming confidence that they are actually still right, not wrong. But if our intention is actually to repair the relationship, we can only go slow. We must do the hard work that starts with the first person and then stays focused on the second. We have to enlarge our imaginations beyond our own assumptions and our own conclusions, our own interests. We have to be willing to say with all sincerity and understanding, I am so sorry. And there, in a flash, the sky splinters and everything changes, and we wonder, what will we do for the rest of our lives now that we are free to begin again? May it be so, and amen.